Hey there everybody, it's Mike DiLisio, and today I'm going to be taking a look at Ostia. This is a new game from the designer and publisher of another game that I really liked recently called Aqua Garden. This is a much larger game than Aqua Garden, and so it definitely stands apart from that. And one of the things I want to point out really quickly is the theme behind this game. It says right here in the rule book, in 103 AD, Emperor Trajan built a new expansion port called Ostia Portus, which was the most important port in Rome. Why do I bring that up? Because this is a game that both thematically and mechanically has a little bit of a kind of a throw out to, or a shout out to Trajan, a game by designer Stefan Feld. As a matter of fact, I believe the designer of this game said that they were inspired by Trajan. So let me just go ahead and take you to the table. I'll show you how it plays. Then we'll come back here and I'll let you know what I think about it. Okay, here we see a game of Ostia set up. For the purposes of this overview, I've got it set up as a two-player game. There are slight differences in the setup depending on the number of players, but for the most part, it's going to look a little something like this. Your aim in the game is to have the most victory points by game end. There are multiple game end triggers that I'll talk about in a moment, but the basic idea here is that you're going to be moving throughout the game up this rewards track. And the points that you're going to get are mostly going to come from this. This becomes a bit of a multiplier where different symbols on your board that are going to get uncovered throughout the game are going to be worth more depending upon how high up the rewards track you go. So clearly you want to move up as high as you can on that track so that all of the symbols that are revealed on your board are going to be worth more points. You also are going to get points for these tokens that have a name that I'll find again here in a second. I forgot the name of them. I know it starts with an A, but this is another way that you can score points throughout the game. Okay, you're going to go in clockwise order, and players are going to be going through a three-phase kind of system when they take their turn. So you have first the selection phase, then the production phase, and then the action phase. So let's take a quick look at the player board here, just so I can kind of explain a little bit, give it a little bit of context. So you've got these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 kind of pie-shaped areas. These are the C areas. And then on the outside, you've got what are known as the resource areas, okay? And so the first thing you're going to do is you're going to select one of these sections that have at least one of your ships on it. That's simple. That's the selection phase. You just select one of these regions that has at least one ship in it. Then for the production phase, you are going to take a number of cubes based on the number of ships that are in that region, and you're going to place them in the resource zone. So just going around here, you've got permits here, you've got wood here, you've got wheat here, stone here, and gold here. Up in the upper left, you do not have a resource that is associated with that, and I'll talk about that in a moment. So, for example, if I wanted to select this in my first phase, then in production I would take 2 of these cubes and place it in here, meaning that I now have 4 permits instead of the 2 I started with. Then finally you're going to go into the action phase. In the action phase, you take all of the ship tokens from the area that you selected and you start dropping them off one by one in a clockwise manner. So I drop one off there and I drop one off here. Then you'll take the action of the region you ended in, okay? So it's kind of that Mancala system that you may be familiar with in other games. And so each of these areas have a different action that is associated with them, and they're all going to use the resource of that area, okay? So you're going to produce in an area most often that is different from the region that you're taking the action in. So you have to be, kind of efficient and plan ahead a little bit so that you are setting yourself up for future actions. All right? Let's talk a little bit about the actions in each of these areas and how they kind of relate to this upper board up here as well. We'll start up here in the upper right, okay? This is when you take the movement action. And so if you're going to take a movement action, you're going to refer to this little chart that's right here on your board, and it's going to tell you how many spaces you can move. You can do this without spending any of your permits to move 1 space. But you can see here, if you spend 2 permits, you go 2 spaces, 4 permits for 3 spaces, 6 permits for 4 spaces, right on down the line. You start the game with one ship in this area, and you also start with one of your production tokens out, and I'll talk about that here in a moment as well. All right, so let's say that I wanted to move 2 spaces, so I would spend 2 of these cubes, and I would move 2 spaces. Now, I've got some areas that I can go to. You're following these white lines. Let's say that I wanted to go 2 spaces, and I'm going to go down this way. All right. I could stop right here if I wanted to. These are trading port tiles. So you've got trading port tiles and transit tiles. Those are the spaces that you'll stop at. Conversely, I can continue and go right along here. When I do that, I pass what's called a discovery tile. And if I do that, I go ahead and I take it, and it tells me immediately gain 2 gold, and now I've got this symbol, which is going to be used for endgame scoring. So I would take 2 cubes and put it into my gold resource area. And then at the end of my turn, if I'm on one of these, not if I pass through it, but if I end my movement on one of these, I can gain whatever's shown there too, which is 2 wood. I'd go ahead and place that into my resource area. Okay, so that's moving. If you have multiple ships on the board, you can split up your movement points among those ships. All right. The next action here is shipbuilding. This needs wood to be able to do so. And what you do is you refer to this area of your board right here. You're going to be building from bottom to top. All right. And it tells you how much wood you have to spend for those ships. So this first ship here is 2 wood. If I was here, I could spend these 2 wood. I can go ahead and I can place this ship on any one of my sea spaces here. I can put it in a spot that already has ships. I can put it in an empty spot. That does not matter. If I have enough wood, I can spend the additional wood on this same action and put out multiple ships. However, one thing to note is that in this second, fourth, and sixth spot, you've got these larger ships, which are called the Ponta ships, and there is a little bit of a restriction there. To build a Ponta ship, you cannot have any of your small ships, which are called Corbita ships. You can't have any of them in the area within this dotted line. So right now, I could not build this ship. If I had gotten this ship out to here, now it's outside of that dotted line, I could then build it. Let's say that I had, because I want to show you how that works. Let's say that this ship was here and I wanted to build this second one. I only have 2 wood and I need 3. However, you can always spend 3 of your gold as a resource. So let's say I spent these other gold here. And now what happens is I get this Ponta ship and I select one of my small Corbita ships and I replace it with this. So let's say that I went ahead and replaced this one. The ship that got replaced now goes up here at the starting spot, and that's how you get more ships out onto this main board. For the purposes of selection, this ship doesn't mean anything. It's just another ship. But for purposes of production, this counts as 2. So if I chose this during my selection phase, I would normally be putting 2 cubes here of my wheat because I have 2 ships. But this is worth 2, so I can take one of these larger cubes, which is a 3, and place it there because I have 2, 3, and then I would go as normal. All right, that's shipbuilding. The next action spot is known as the order spot, okay? And this is going to allow you to gain some of these cards right over here and potentially some resources as well. So what you need for this one is wheat, okay? And so let's say, for example, that this is the way my board was set up. I have 5 wheat right here. I could look at these cards and they're going to have a cost on them in the upper left. In wheat, okay? This one costs 4 wheat, this one costs 5 wheat, and if you'll notice it also has a smaller little symbol there of 2 wood. Okay, so let me actually show you this one instead. All right, this one has 5 wheat and 2 stone, all right? So let's say, for example, that this was the way my board was set up, and again, I'm just using the blue board for this. There is also another player here, of course. But let's say that I took this order action and I wanted to fulfill this card. I would spend that 5 wheat, okay, because I'd have to. That is a must, that upper one. However, if I wanted to, and I had the resources, in this case, 2 stone, I could spend those to get an additional one of these, I think they're called amphora tokens. I believe that's what they're called. And let's say that I did that, okay, and I spent that 2 stone. Now, I'm going to get 2 of these tokens, okay, and they are in a limited supply by player count. I place them right here. Again, those are end game scoring depending upon how you move up that reward track. I also am going to get these 2 resources, 2 wood, which I'd pop right into my resource area. And this symbol is going to be used at the end of the game towards a set collection type of an aspect. All right, that's the order action. Over here, you've got the build action, okay? And this is where you can start putting out these production tiles, okay? These little tokens. This uses stone, so let's say that I had stone here to spend. If I had 2 stone, I could take my token, and now I can place it onto any of these areas that my ship has passed through. Again, you started the game with 1. So right now, the only place I can place this token would be right here because I've passed through this area with my ship. So I went ahead and I placed it there. When you place one of these tokens out, you're going to take one of these little building pieces and you're going to place it onto your board. You start off with one in the initial spot that doesn't really do anything, but these other places that you place it are going to allow you to more efficiently take actions, generally speaking. So if I placed it here, what this is telling me is that now during production, I'd get +1 permit or +1 wood. Or if I placed it here, now I could do the shipbuilding action for 1 less wood. I could do the order action for 1 less wheat, or the build action for 1 less stone, okay? Or if I put something here, which that one already actually had one on the board, that was a mistake. If I put one here, I can make my conversion action better for a gold, where I can spend 2 gold for any 1 resource. If I go here, this is a one-time use, and I immediately move up the reward track, okay? So that's one of the things that these are going to do. They're going to allow you to not only put a building out here to make your actions more efficient, but now during a trade action, you've got another thing you can do. You can spend gold for wood a max of 4 times. And so these tokens on the board are sometimes going to be used for the trade, and it shows that little symbol there. Sometimes it's going to be worth symbols at the end of the game, like it shows here with that little moon. Sometimes it's just worth points at the end of the game. And so all of those are going to be put out randomly also at the beginning of the game. All right, so that is the build action. Next, we've got the trade action, okay? And this is where you can use gaining resources by using these symbols, okay? So for the trade action, you could go ahead and do this. I should have refilled that. You can do any of the trade actions that are out here that you've got a token on. So in this case, I've got 2 tokens that both would let me trade gold for either wood or stone up to a maximum of 4 times. All right. The other thing that you can do is take honor cards, and these are along right now on the right side of the board. If you are able to fulfill the requirements of these cards, you can spend 4 gold during this action, during the trade action, to gain one of these cards. So for example, this one is saying that if you have 2 of your ships past the dotted line at the time that you take this trade action, you can go ahead and spend 4 gold and you'll get this at the end of the game. It's worth 12 points. Okay, so these are a race, basically. The first one to be able to fill those requirements. Most of them are going to be having a number of revealed symbols on your board, but sometimes it's going to be ship placement and things along those lines, or how far along you are on the reward track as well. Those are all things you can do to get those cards. Finally, you've got what is known as the administration action. Now, this one does not have any resources, so if you choose this as your selection, you're not going to be gaining any resources. But if you end your action in the administration spot, what you're going to do is you can, for free, do any one of the other actions except for trade. So if you end here, you can do a move, you can do a ship build, you can do an order action, you can do a building action. You do that action as per normal, spending the resources as you normally would. And then if you want to, well, that is optional. Actually, that first part is doing a free action if you want to. But then you also are going to move the ships like you normally would. So let's say that I ended here and I did a movement action. Then I would take these ships and I would go ahead and do the action as per normal. So I could have done a move and a shipbuilding if I wanted to. All right, so that's the way the administration action works. So those are all of the actions on the board. You're going to take turns, clockwise order, doing those 3 phases, and the end game is going to be triggered by one of a number of different conditions. First, if anyone reaches the top spot of the reward track over here, that would trigger the end game. If 3 or more of your ship tokens reach these destination tiles, which are all the way at the end, the first on all of these is going to get a better reward than the later players that come across. In this case, the first ship here gets 3 reward tokens, right, or 3 reward movements right away. The other ships would get 2, and some of these are end game scoring. So that would be another way the game would end if 3 or more ships ends there. If anybody removes all of their ships from their track, that would trigger the end game. If all of their construction little tokens are removed from the end of the game, that would trigger end game. Or if all of the amphora tokens, which are these, are removed from the game, are claimed, that would also trigger end game. And again, the number of these tokens are scaled by player count, so that is something that will be accounted for. Once you get to the end of the game, you'll make sure that everyone has an equal number of turns. The first player doesn't change throughout the game. And you're going to do a final score calculation, which is based upon a number of things. Again, depending upon your position on the reward track, you're going to get numbers of points for the number of your symbols of the different types, of your ship symbols, of your construction symbols. You're going to get points for the number of amphora tokens you have based upon your placement on that reward track. And again, there are also ways to get points end game here on some of these tiles. You'll get, if you got one of these cards, you're going to get points for that. And then you're going to get points for a complete set of icons. Okay, you've got these nobleman icons here. This particular card has the nobleman and the noblewomen, both icons on there. If you get those plus the wild animal and exotic animal tokens, so let's say we had these, for example, I've got these 2 tokens and this card. That's a complete set, all right? So that's going to be worth a number of points, is why I believe that is 12 points. I'd have to double check that. But set collection in that way is going to be another way that you get points, all right? It is 12 points. I double checked that, all right? Whoever has the most points after computing all of that is going to be the winner of Ostia. Let's head back over and I'll let you know what I think. All right, well, there you go. Hopefully that gives you an idea on how the game is played. There's a fair amount going on, but it is relatively, it makes sense. After a turn or two, once you get the idea of how that kind of Mancala mechanism works, where you're producing in one area and usually taking an action in a different area, though not always, it makes sense in seeing how that ties together to that main board. And so at the very beginning, I made sure to make a point out of talking about the potential connections between this game and another game called Trajan from designer Stefan Feld. And again, none of that is accidental. There are very clear connections between those games. And I'll even bring up a couple of comparisons, because Trajan is a game that is actually my favorite Stefan Feld game, and definitely in that Mancala kind of central core mechanic of the game, you see those connections. But in other ways, I feel like it stands apart from Trajan. All right. The first thing that I want to do is I want to talk just about the kind of the art and the components in the game. Just based off of what little bit I've seen since the game has been released, the art is a little bit divisive in this game. And also, actually, based upon discussions I've had with other people at the Dice Tower when this game was up on crowdfunding, there were some people in the staff. I believe Tom wasn't a huge fan of this cover. I love the cover, and I really like the art on the board as well. It's a bit minimalistic, okay? There's not a whole lot, but I think that works in this game quite a bit, because it allows everything to be very clearly seen. And so in a game with a number of icons like this one does, I much prefer being able to easily see on the board what those icons are trying to denote. It's not getting cluttered with a lot of background kind of visual noise in my mind. However, your taste may vary. It may be a little too austere for some, but I really like the art. Now, the components in the game are, I just think, stellar. I really don't even know how else to put it. I mean, the production is off the charts good. The player board being dual layered, I think is not only aesthetically pleasing, but it is functionally helpful as well. Not even necessarily necessary in this one for the dual layer boards, but they're certainly appreciated. The wooden tokens, now this does have, I need to point this out, this has wooden upgrade tokens. That was something that came with this Kickstarter. So those wooden kind of the transport tiles and the discovery tiles and the destination tiles are all a very nice thick wooden tile, and so I'm reviewing this version. All right, the components on this version are incredible. Screen printed wooden pieces. Every one of those locations has unique buildings. Was that necessary? Absolutely not. Is it appreciated? Yes, very much. I love being able to see those different little buildings and putting them out on your board. It just aesthetically is so pleasing. The card quality is very good. This version actually came with sleeves as well, and so you don't need the sleeves because you're not shuffling the cards very often, and they're not being handled all that often, and they're good quality cards, but the sleeves are nice if you have them and want to use them. So just on a production level, I think stellar. Even the all the way down to the storage system in the game is very good. You've got the little kind of plastic boats to keep your the components, the resources in, and that's very nice as well. Could they have gone a little bit fancier with the resources and not had cubes and instead had wood for the wood and stone for the stone? Yes, you could have, but honestly, in this particular case, it's much easier, I think, for me to just grab a stone or a cube and do that. But again, you can bling it out. You know, these are common resources. If you wanted to get, you know, wheat, wood, and stone, it would not be hard to find custom wood pieces or metal pieces even to go along with that if you wanted to do that. But very, very positive on the components, and I like the art as well. The gameplay, all right, this is the main crux of things. My favorite part of Trajan, well, there were two things. One was the fact that it was kind of a series of mini games, and I tend to like that in games. But also, the main hook of Trajan, I felt, was always that Mancala main mechanic that drives the game. And Ostia has a version of that. It's not exactly the same. And I really, really like it in this game. I like the fact that you are producing in an area that most often is going to be for a future action. Now again, if you can get it so that you have enough ships that you can produce and take your action in that same spot, sure, that's fantastic, because it means that by design, you're going to have a bunch of ships in that spot, you're producing a bunch, and you're going to have a powerful version of that action. But that's not going to be the case most often. Most often what's going to happen is you are setting yourself up for future turns. So you're looking at your board and saying, all right, I'd like to have a really good movement on my next action. I've got my ship set up so that I can take the action of movement next time. So I'll select from there. Hopefully you've produced a couple of permits there. And so on your next turn, you're taking that action, or maybe even 2 turns down the line. It's a very satisfying thing to be able to be efficient, to get efficient about that so that you don't feel like you're taking many substandard or suboptimal turns. It's going to happen every so often. There's just no two ways about it. There are going to be times where you can't even necessarily take the action that you end on, but it's so important for you to produce more or to set yourself up for a future turn. But it always feels good when you're able to do that as rarely as possible, and most often you're taking turns that feel good, that feel efficient, that feel as close to optimal as possible. And so all of that works. All of the actions, I think, are intuitive. They make sense. I like the way that the shipbuilding action works, and I especially like the fact that when you get those Ponta ships out, that's how you get more ships out onto the main board. Really clever, a neat idea. One of my favorite parts of the game is being able to take those tokens that are going to allow you, those building tokens that are going to allow you to make your actions more efficient. The order that you do that is really kind of a neat puzzle and a neat way to give you some direction. So it's like, you know what? I know that I want to push shipbuilding this particular game. So I'm going to make my shipbuilding action more efficient. You can do that a couple of ways. One, you can make it cheaper for you to take that action. And two, you can also increase your wood production, which is the resource you need to build ships. I really like that upgrading mechanism there. That's really clever, feels good, and again, helps you kind of get a more efficient engine going, because this is about efficiency, right? You're racing in many different ways. You're racing to get those honor cards. You're racing to get to those destination tiles first. You're racing up that reward track. And that's another thing I'm going to bring up, is that if you've played the game Scythe, you're going to probably see some similarities there between that reward track and the track that you've got in the popularity track, I believe it is, in Scythe. And again, I doubt that that is coincidental. I would imagine that that was something that was an inspiration point for the designer. And I really liked it, and I really like that scoring mechanism in Scythe, and I really like it here. It works very well. It kind of gives you, again, a clear sense of what your symbols are worth, and that is helpful. So all of this is very, very good. The couple of little negative things that I might note is that while this is a beautiful production, and it absolutely is, this is a really big box. This is a large box, and it is a large box because it has such a large central board. I appreciate that for usability, right? It makes it very easy, again, to clearly see what those paths are, and that is important, and to be able to clearly see what those different tiles are, which is also very important. But it's a bit of a table hog, okay? And so you have to be aware that it's going to take up a significant amount of table space, especially if you're playing 4 players. So that is something that I wanted to point out. Maybe a little bit larger than it needed to be, but not terrible, just a bit larger than maybe it could have been. And so that is one of the potential downsides. The other thing is that depending upon what your level of interaction that you like in games and what type of interaction you like in games, there's not a lot of direct interaction in Ostia. You are taking most of your attention is on your own personal board. You are having to deal with some shared areas out there on that central board. And if you place one of your development tokens on top of someone that got there first, they're going to get a gold from the supply, not from you. They're going to get a gold. So that's something. You are racing to those destination points. So that's some indirect interaction. If you want more direct kind of fighty or take thatty type stuff, this isn't it. So you need to be aware of that. I don't think it gets to the level of multiplayer solitaire, which again, I don't even necessarily dislike, but some people do. But it's the interaction is indirect where you have it at all. So all of this being said, I think that Ostia is a spectacular design. I mean, this is a designer that I'm really going to be paying a lot of attention to, because with Aqua Garden being a much smaller game that I really liked with an efficiency puzzle feel, Ostia is a bigger, more audacious, not only production, but design. It is significantly more complex than Aqua Garden, although I would still consider this to be a medium weight game, maybe on the high end of medium weight game. Just a wonderful design. I'm giving Ostia a 9 out of 10, a seal of excellence. This is a game that has continued to impress the more and more that I've played, and it has played well across different player counts as well, so that has been very nice to see. So there you go, Ostia, a game that if you like the kind of the Mancala mechanism, it's definitely one that you should check out. All right, well, that's going to do it for me. This is Mike DiLisio signing off from Dice Tower Midwest Annex.